lose it all. I'm not sure how many homes were lost.
Tonight, homes lost, massive evacuations. As wildfires in northern Alberta grow so big, flames have jumped across the Peace River.
It was a great moment. I was proud to be a part of it.
Criminal charges dropped against Muskrat Falls land protectors, but the legal battle isn't over. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Dennis Ward. Grassy Narrows First Nation is waiting in limbo after a planned agreement signing with the federal government went awry. The Anishinaabe community has been fighting over 40 years for a way to treat mercury poisoning. But as Brittany Hobson shows us, their fight isn't over.
The day started with a community feast in the school's gymnasium, but missing was Minister of Indigenous Services, Seamus O'Regan. Days earlier, his office announced the federal government had come to an agreement with Grassy Narrows First Nation. However, this was not the case. Instead, O'Regan and Chief Rudy Turtle spent nearly 4 hours in discussions.
We made some steps today. This is what negotiation looks like. It takes its own course.
The agreement in question is over a proposed specialized treatment center for members living with mercury poisoning. In 2017, the Liberal government committed to building the center, but to date, nothing has been done.
The minister came in today and he was hoping that we would sign a memorandum of agreement, but the proposal that they put forward was not adequate. It wasn't good enough, and so we just couldn't sign it today.
Details relating to the agreement weren't released, but Turtle says the feds have failed to follow through with their 2017 commitment.
But what they've come up with is what they call assisted living, and so those are two different things.
Decades ago, a paper mill in Dryden dumped mercury in the Wabigoon River. Since then, members of Grassy Narrows have been living with physical and mental health issues. Chris Swain was one of the first to be hospitalized. He's still in pain today.
Yeah, I do have a few problems, like with my legs. I still have problems. I have to exercise them every morning before I can start walking because it seems like it's getting worse. It's not getting any better.
Wednesday's events left the community disappointed.
I think it's really important that
It's really disrespectful that you didn't show up to 150 kids and families that wanted to share their stories with you. Why it's important that we have that mercury home here. Why it's important that our river has to be cleaned up right away. We have kids that are suffering every day, people that are dying every day.
Chrissy Isaacs said it was important to remind O'Regan the community needs help now.
To be sitting out here waiting for him to just say we're still talking, you know, we need action now. We need what they promised. Was that mercury home to be built?
O'Regan said negotiations will continue.
Thank you very much.
Meanwhile, Chief Turtle will keep pushing the Liberals for what they promised his community.
That the deal we get for Grassy is not just a temporary Band-Aid fix, but it's a fix that will be for today, tomorrow, and right on to our grandchildren.
Brittany Hobson, APTN National News on the Grassy Narrows First Nation.
NDP MP Charlie Angus brought the failure to reach a deal in Grassy Narrows to the floor of the House. He directed a question about it to Prime Minister Trudeau during question period, but neither him or Indigenous Services Minister Seamus O'Regan were present to answer.
The people of Grassy Narrows believed this Prime Minister when he made a solemn promise to build a mercury treatment centre. He even gave them a timeline and then nothing happened. I guess we should have known the punchline was coming when the Prime Minister made a joke about them for his rich donor friends. So the punchline came yesterday, an empty agreement. No wonder Grassy Narrows refused to sign that bogus agreement. You know, politics is full of broken promises, but this one? How does the Prime Minister justify such deplorable treatment to the people of Grassy Narrows?
Honourable Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Mr. Speaker, building a health facility in Grassy Narrows is an absolute priority. That's why the minister went yesterday day to meet with the chief and council and the community yesterday. Progress is being made, and we are committed to a comprehensive solution that meets the needs of all the community. The people of Grassy Narrows have suffered for over 50 years. We will find a path forward on a plan that meets the needs of the community now and in the long term.
Honourable member for Timmins, James Bay.
A massive fire in northern Alberta has made its way to the Paddle Prairie Métis settlement. The hamlet has been evacuated and everyone is reported safe, but members of the community fear their homes have been lost. Tamara Pimentel has that story.
Up ahead.
Members of the Paddle Prairie Métis settlement flee for safety as a fire 230,000 hectares in size nears the community. Residents say homes were lost.
I mean, it was still going hard when I left. I know we did lose some homes.
Winds coming in from the north push the fire that's near high level south toward Paddle Prairie. Members were told to evacuate when the fire reached 2 kilometers from the hamlet. Lori Wanich, vice chair for the settlement, says members were not given enough notice.
Our members did not take anything. As far as we knew, we weren't at threat from the Chuckegg Creek fire.
Last week, APTN visited Paddle Prairie. Members were creating their own evacuation plan. Elders, children, and those with respiratory illnesses were asked to leave due to the smoke, but no one was prepared for this.
I just talked to my brother and he said, we could lose it all. I'm not sure how many homes were lost. We haven't, with the smoke cover, you have to wait until that lifts.
Tina St. Germain was one of many volunteers helping those who evacuated from high level last week. She says her home is in line with the fire.
When I walked in that house, it wasn't about the stuff. It was the structure that you built your family around, right? I walked around in a daze in that house. There was so much I could have grabbed because I have the time, right? And I couldn't even think, and all I could think was the memories.
Currently, there are 29 wildfires in Alberta. Wabasca and Big Stone Cree Nation were evacuated earlier this week. There are more than a dozen communities that have been evacuated since the fire started 2 weeks ago, leaving evacuees scattered across the northern part of the province. But for Paddle Prairie Métis settlement, Wanich says 2 members have stayed back to assist with the fire. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Fairview, Alberta.
And as you just heard there, new evacuations have forced more than 2,000 people to flee in a remote area of the province. Residents in Wabasca, the surrounding Big Stone Cree Nation, and the Municipal District of Opportunity were told to leave their homes last night. Here's what it looked like on the ground. Residents in the area posted these pictures to social media after they were told to be ready to leave at a moment's notice. Scary images. Now to Ontario, where some frightening images coming out of Pikangikum First Nation as a forest fire burns out of control there, just a few kilometers away. Evacuations are underway this afternoon for approximately 1,600 community members. Chief of Pikangikum First Nation declared a state of emergency Friday night. Today, the public safety minister sent Canadian Forces Hercules aircraft to start evacuations. Fire was reported Wednesday afternoon and is only about 3 kilometers from the community. Fire crews are working to get it under control. Chief Amanda Sanawap said it's been exhausting and chaotic with hundreds of people waiting at the airport all day.
It's absolutely horrifying. You could actually hear the roar of the fire. Children at the nursing station right now that are with respiratory issues that need medical attention. There's elders that have been standing too long and their legs are swelling. There's diabetics who are feeling unwell. There's elders in their wheelchairs. There was kids. There was kids in wheelchairs, disabled kids. There was chaos.
we'd like to hear what you think about the forest fire situation or any other story. Here's how to continue the conversation. Send your emails to news@aptn.ca. Find us online at aptnnews.ca and on youtube.com/aptn news. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest Indigenous news. First Nations and allies took to the streets of Toronto on Wednesday to protest what they say is Canada's attempt to domesticate or terminate inherent Indigenous rights. More than 100 people marched through the downtown core, shutting down a major intersection at Yonge and Dundas with a round dance, temporarily occupying an Indigenous Services Canada office. Association of Iroquois and Allied Indians Deputy Grand Chief Gordon Peters explains the significance of the original Haudenosaunee Treaty and with settlers.
We saw a flag. The young girls are holding a flag, the two-row wampum. Can you talk about that, the significance of that?
Oh, it's very significant because that's the grandfather of our treaties and our treaty relationships, where we agreed to live together in the river of life. We agreed in that process that what we would do is that we would make sure that we didn't pass laws on each other, we wouldn't try to change each other's lives, but we would find a way of being able to coexist peacefully so that we could all live together and all benefit from the land. That's the fundamental process that we're still pushing for, because all of our treaties say the same thing. It says that we're meant to be able to coexist together. It doesn't mean that Canada's position, which is saying once you sign treaties you extinguish all your lands. You'd have to be absolutely crazy to believe that you were going to extinguish your lands by entering into a treaty. None of that is true. It's Canada's policy, simple as that.
More than a dozen land protectors who occupied the Muskrat Falls hydroelectric project site in 2016 no longer face criminal charges for protecting their food and way of life from the controversial dam in Labrador. On Wednesday, the Crown dropped charges against 14 people who also face civil contempt charges for allegedly breaking an injunction meant to keep demonstrators away from the site. Beatrice Hunter, who spent time in prison for refusing to stay away from Muskrat Falls, says she doesn't regret the occupation.
It was a great moment. I was proud to be a part of it. I'm glad my son also witnessed it. I'm glad he was a part of it too. I've, for the last 2.5 years, it's been, it wasn't easy, but I guess doing the right thing, what you feel is right, isn't easy anyway.
Time for a quick break, and then we'll take you on a tour of a 2-billion-year-old crater. Stay with us.
Hello, I'm Todd Lamoran, and here's what's coming up on Nation of Nations' last show of the season. NDP MP Romeo Saganash is leaving politics and won't be running for re-election in October. But before he rides off into the sunset, he dropped by our Ottawa studio and talked about his time on Parliament Hill, the highs and lows, and everything in between. As well, our political panel of MPs will be here, arguing over some of the last-minute pieces of proposed laws important to Indigenous people, in particular, child welfare reform. That's all coming up right after the national news.
Here's a look at the weather starting on the East Coast. 15 in showers in Charlottetown, 10 with rain for St. John's. +3 with showers for Nain, 5 and rain in Cartwright. 17 under sunny skies for Montreal, 15 under the sun in Saguenay. 22 for Windsor, London, and Sarnia, rain, and 13 for Sault Ste. Marie. A rainy day in Thunder Bay with a high of 14, 17 in showers for Sioux Lookout. +5 with a chance of snow for Churchill, 14 under sunny skies in Norway House. 18 for Winnipeg and Dauphin, 21 under the sun in Brandon. 23 for Regina and Estevan, 24 and sunny in North Battleford, 21 under the sun in Meadow Lake. Welcome back. You can learn a lot for going for a walk, but imagine what you can learn walking into a 2-billion-year-old crater. That's 62 kilometers long, 30 kilometers wide, and 15 kilometers deep. Angel Moore brings us this story from the Sudbury Basin.
A walk in one of the largest craters in the world that's nearly 2 billion years old is full of history and is a learning opportunity.
I want to experience more of my outcomes in my science fields. Along in that, I want to learn more about nature. I want to know about more of the underground mines, and I want to know a lot more.
15 Mi'kmaq students came to the Sudbury Basin for a hands-on experience.
I think here is way more important to be anywhere else because I love it. I love being here, and I hope everyone does as well because I'm going to learn. I'm learning a lot, and I'm going to learn a lot.
The students are on a program by Digital Mi'kmaq that introduces youth to science. Lavina Marshall says more girls need to get involved in science.
I never thought I would do, but it opens my eyes more to more science programs that I would like to do in my pleasant future.
Dre Tony says he wants to be a role model for the youth in his community.
I think we need a lot more Indigenous to search and to discover around the world so we could teach the next generation.
David Pearson says the crater has many science stories.
They can read out of the rocks that are underneath their feet here. All of these tiny particles and specimens they've been picking up were part of what fell back into the Sudbury Crater nearly 2 billion years ago.
Pearson hopes the students are inspired to a career in science.
I hope that in 10 years' time, when somebody sends me an email about where these students are now, that some of them indeed are scientists.
The science trip is over and the students have returned home to Nova Scotia. Angel Moore, APTN National News at the Sudbury Basin.
This week, Indigenous high school students were chosen to take part in an all-expenses-paid education program. It gives them the opportunity to visit a Manitoba university and get a glimpse into post-secondary institution. Ashley Branson has that story.
There's also some variables that you have no control over in this experiment, like the pressure of the gas in the tube, the temperature in the room, the humidity.
High school students from Manitoba and Saskatchewan are taking part in the Verna J. Kirkness Science and Engineering program at the University of Manitoba. They spend a week in a science or engineering research lab with all costs paid by the foundation. Lachlan Lubinsky is one of the 39 Indigenous students participating in the program. For the last 4 days, he's explored the Department of Kinesiology, the study of mechanics of body movements.
I've learned some stuff about the function of muscles, the science behind activity, and how that helps athletes become better in sport.
And Emily Fronda explored the Department of Physics.
Well, we did some work with radiation, which I thought was going to be scary, but then we did some training and explaining how it shouldn't be scary. It's a natural thing.
Ron Wasno, the executive director, says the program was named after Verna J. Kirkness to honor her accomplishments as an educator.
So Verna's 83 this year, started at 17 as a teaching assistant, ended up as a professor at the University of British Columbia. Incredible network across the country.
In 2019, the Kirkness program visited 9 universities across Canada with 141 students participating. He says one of the goals is to excite young Indigenous students who hope to continue their education after high school.
Normally, there's a whole bunch of barriers. So by bringing them to the university and having them mentored by a professor and their research group, it shows them that there's a huge amount of resources available to them.
Another goal of the foundation is to increase the number of Indigenous students enrolling in science and engineering programs in Canada and one day graduating.
We do see students returning. I don't have exact numbers of that, but for sure we have a few who have gone on to med school, I can tell you that much, and definitely through our engineering program, our engineering access program, some have returned to that.
Lubinsky is only in grade 10, but says this experience is just a taste of what's to come in the future.
I believe that this gave me lots of insight into my own culture and also how university works.
The program ends with an honor dinner and presentations by the students on what they learned throughout the week. Ashley Branson, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Time for another quick break, but stick around. There's more to come. Here's the rest of Friday's weather forecast, picking back up in a smoky northern Alberta. 16 in Fort Chipewyan, 27 for Peace River, 23 and rain for Calgary, 26 under the sun in Medicine Hat. Sunny across the west coast, 23 in Victoria, 26 for Campbell River, 25 and smoky for Fort Nelson, 23 and sunny for Smithers, 16 under sunny skies for Old Crow, 1 degree warmer in Whitehorse. Rain and 24 for Fort Liard and Trout Lake, sunny and 11 in Yellowknife, 0 for Sax Harbor, +1 in Paulatuck, 10 above in Colville Lake, 1 above for Chesterfield and Whale Cove with snow, 2 in snow in Baker Lake, +2 in Clyde River, +1 in Resolute. Welcome back. APTN Investigates returns tomorrow night with an all-new episode. Video journalist Cullen Crozier looks into the use of solitary confinement in Canadian prisons. Here's a preview.
You start out by wondering when you're going to get out. And then you realize that you're not going to get out. Then you wonder, what can you do to try to get out, to deal? And then you realize that no matter what you do, you're not getting out of SAG.
It was very cold, very empty, just a very sad, dark place. It wasn't enough for me to walk around in. I would feel like I was getting tinier in the cell. It would sometimes feel like I was constantly being caved in from it, how small it was.
Sort of an understanding of why I'm there, when I'm going to get out. Is there hope beyond this? Am I still human? You know, do you still value me? A lot of times we forget about the humanity behind it. That, you know, yeah, you committed the crime, and yeah, maybe you have some behavior problems. You're in solitary confinement, but that doesn't make you any less human than anybody else.
And APTN Investigates Buried Alive airs tomorrow night, right here, right after the APTN National News. And that is your APTN National News for this Thursday. For much more, visit our website, aptnnews.ca. And before you tune in to watch the Raptors tonight, stick around to watch the finale of Nation to Nation with Todd Lamarand. That's next. I'm Dennis Ward. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night.